Hey everyone, I'm Dan Pontefract. The worst advice I ever got as a leader was don't ever show your real self to your team members, Dan, because they'll take advantage of that. OMG, Phil.
Wow. I got that advice early on too, Dan, and that wasn't great for me. But when did you get that in your career?
I got it early on in the academic world where a couple academics basically at the higher ranks said that university was not for showing your true self. You were there for a reason, and you were there to turn them into different people. They're like, okay, I can't be in this profession anymore. This is crazy.
Wow. So
Yeah.
you quit that fairly soon then, huh?
Well, I mean, it took 5 or 6 years for me to kind of figure out maybe my calling needed to be in the corporate world, or at least in the non-academic pure world. But yeah, I learned a lot. I'm not completely against what I did, but yeah, that type of feedback from a faculty or a couple of faculty members that are in the leadership side, it's like, what what happened to you in life, right?
Yeah, right. Like who hurt you, right? Who
Yeah.
show me on your body where you got hurt, right?
Do you need a medic, or do you need a band, or do you need a hug, Phil? That's what I was thinking. Maybe. Yeah.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So tell us though, for those listening, Dan, why is that such bad advice?
So, okay, like when you think about it, whether you're in academia or the corporate world or not for profit, NGO, wherever you work, I mean, why is it that so many leaders think they need to check themselves at the door, like their true self? Like, I don't like, I don't get it. When organizations say, we want you to bring your most authentic self, your best self to work, but then what they're really doing is not allowing that to happen because they've created these constraints, they've created these nonsense, HR/organizational policies or processes. I just don't understand. I think people want to be human. I don't think we wake up to say, hey, Phil, should I not wear awesome glasses and great shirts today? Or hats in my case, or fluvog shoes. Like, no, I want to be able to bring like who I am, my identity to work, and I don't want to be an arse. I don't want to be a buffoon, but I also want to sort of be me. And if you allow people to be themselves, don't you think you're going to get a more richer, fuller individual to do the work at the work? So I just think the math's wrong on this one, Phil.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the fear though is that people be too much themselves. I'm using air quotes here, when in reality, I want, for my team, I want their whole self. I want every bit of who they are to show up because frankly, that's why I hired them. That's why they're on my team. That's why they're valuable. Not because they think like you or think like me, but because they think like themselves. And that shows up in the way they dress, that shows up in the way they work, that shows up in their family, that shows up in their pets, that shows up in everything. And yet I think a lot of leaders are still afraid to let that all hang out.
I couldn't agree more. I think the adage sometimes I rely on is the diversity of thought is the true richness of life. And so if you extend life to be rich, right, isn't diversity of thought really the true richness of work as well? And does it slow things down? Maybe. Is the end result better? Probably. So it may take you longer because of diversity of thought and diversity of people, but isn't that really what life is? We are a diverse nation. We're a diverse planet. And that is going to help us, not stifle us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. So work-life balance, Dan, that's what we're talking about today, right?
So do you want me to come through my Logitech camera and to punch you, Phil? Like, is that what we're going to do?
I guess so, right? No, but that is what you want to bust, right? That's what you're trying to bust with your book, right? With Work-Life Bloom.
Yeah.
It's not about balance. It's about blooming. So tell me, Dan, why is work-life balance not something that we should be striving for? And why should it be blooming?
Okay, so here we go, Phil. So thanks for a book plug, by the way. It's really kind of you. But yeah, you're right. When I mean, I've been around the block. I've been around the sun 52 times, so I've seen this in many different situations where a leader or an organization espouse like one of their corporate values as work-life balance. We believe in work-life balance. And it's like sitting there in the front lobby as one of the 4 core values, right? Okay. So let's look at that for a second. Then let me just come back to work-life balance. Then we start measuring employee engagement. So all of a sudden now we've said we believe in work-life balance, life being what's outside of the work, yet we're only measuring when you're an employee. Could you not be any more antithetical and ironical in the same sort of tone? So let's back it up. Work-life balance. To me, at least in my experience, my research, it's a zero-sum game. And the pandemic has proven it. And here we are 3.5 years post, apocalypse from the lockdown. But we're still seeing the complete fissures in the way in which organizational culture ought to be operating. And yet, what do we have? We don't have work-life balance. We have work-work imbalance. And so leaders aren't thinking about life. They're thinking about the imbalance between when you're doing the work and when you're doing the work, meaning you're not doing enough work. And so what do we see? The cracks and the fissures in society are anger is up, sadness is up, stress is up, anxiety is up, isolation is up, loneliness is up, burnout is out. Phil, we're going to lose your listeners and viewers by the droves because I'm going to send them into this tizzy of angst. They're like, Dan, when can you get happier? Like, this is supposed to be a happy podcast. What's going on here? It's conversation with Phil and Dan. You're making me mad. I want to go punch my cat. This is not cool. But if you look at the data suggests whatever it is, Deloitte, Gallup, American Health Association, AMA, wherever, like we can see in the last 14, 15 years, pandemic included, that society is increasing in all of these different stressors. So you're telling me, Phil, that work-life balance is a thing, yet all of these different measures have been negatively increasing? So there's number one. And then number two, what do our leaders continue to do? They continue to measure, quote, employee engagement. Are you engaged or not at work, without ironically asking themselves, well, what about the whole work-life thing? Like, did we lose that in the lobby? Did someone erase the life word like from the lobby? And you're going into HR and now you're measuring, once a year usually, whether or not you're engaged. And let's extend that one more time, Phil. Employee, okay, now you're just making me a number, but what if you're not engaged and you're an employee? What do we call them? We call them chronically disengaged. Like, can you think of anything more terrible than saying to somebody, hey, we believe in work-life balance, Phil, but we forgot what that means. So we forgot, it's like work-work imbalance. Also, we're going to measure employee engagement. If you're not engaged, we're going to call you chronically disengaged. It's like wearing a scarlet letter around the office. And oh, by the way, according to data, 70% of us in North America are not engaged at work. So maybe we have had our, a paper bag over our heads for the past 20, 25 years in HR land, maybe. And then leaders have sort of glommed onto this and they keep walking past the sign in the lobby that says work-life balance is our thing. And we measure engagement every year. Yet all of the other data says none of it is happening. And it's all utter BS, Phil.
Wow. So no balance, work imbalance, I think is a great way to think about it, because absolutely we measure, how happy are you at work? Well, that's like 8 hours of my day. That's not my whole life. That's not everything. And how much does work contribute to my life? Well, that's the other thing. I mean, it all spills over. This is a circle. This is not just that. So you've got actually, what I really enjoy about the book is you've got 4 big quadrants here. I'm going to talk about those in just a minute here. But before we do, let's talk a little bit about Fluvog. I love Fluvog shoes too. I think they're really cool. because they're really unique, right? If you're listening and you've never heard of John Fluevog, Fluevog, John Fluevog, you got to take a look at these shoes. They're super cool, but they have the most engaged employees because I think your research backs this up, that they just actually really want to be there and they're happy with their life as well. Is that right? Or how are they so happy?
So I couldn't agree more about John Fluevog shoes, by the way. So they're this 53-year young organization of 350 people right around the world. And if you just Google their shoes are their culture. They're this flowery, open, colorful, diverse, copacetically blooming culture. And the organization set out to make sure from the very get-go that they would basically create a culture in which work and life were integrated, that they cared about people after work, that they could care about what their kind of life factors, you want to call it those, into the organization. And it's just this wonderful little case study that Nir opens up the book about what an organization can do, even this case, an international company of 350 people, saying, look, wherever you are, we want to care about your life factors. We want to help you with your sense of meaning, your sense of respect, how your skills are. Bring that back into the office, whether you're at headquarters designing shoes, whether you're selling shoes, whether you're out and making partnerships with Star Trek and Disney and whoever. But we want the work to be one where you're trusted, you feel like you belong, you get our strategy, and that, this is all part and parcel to this work-life integration or work-life harmony or work-life bloom, if you will. So Fluevog is a great example. Thanks for bringing that up. And they're an inspiration and really almost helped me kind of think about the word bloom. It's like, wow, this is one blooming culture over there.
Yeah, absolutely. And every one of their stores, people love working there. I've been to a couple of them, and it's amazing. I mean, it's and I'm not trying to denigrate retail, but it's just retail. They're just selling shoes.
Yeah, I know.
Except they're not.
You can definitely look at that, right? You say, well, they're just shoes, right? Well, I urge you, wherever you are, so in New Orleans or New York or San Fran or Denver, Portland, wherever you're chiming in today, check out FLUEVOG.com. and Fluevog.com. And Fluevog, the stores, when you walk in, people, they greet you. It's like you walked into this oasis of awesomeness. But then, it's a retail experience. But then when you, like I did, and learning about this company more and more and more, and going to headquarters and meeting with John Fluevog, the founder, and his sons, Stephen and Adrian and team, and then meeting the managers like Patrick, and Wayne, and you're just like, okay, this is not like a facade. This is like you guys actually are employing this notion of what it means to be fully integrated between kind of this work and this life thing. So great case study. Thank you, Phil.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that stood out to me. I'm a big fan of Fluevog. Enjoy their stores. Love the culture there. You can tell they get it. So let's get to a little bit of meat here. We got a couple questions here. How do we fix it? How do we incorporate this into a mature hierarchical environment such as the audit and accounting world? Right, we're seeing the serious lack of staff. Well, Dan's got these 4 different dimensions, if you will. I took a screenshot or took a picture of the book, right? Because I wanted to make sure we talked about these. We've got budding, blooming, renewal, and stunted here. And it's from amazing to awful, confused to clear. And before we get started at talking about how we fix it, let's talk a little bit about those, Dan. I'm in the budding space right now, which I'm actually really happy about. I think that's really good. I'm happy to be in budding. Sure, can it improve? Yeah, a lot of that's on me to improve it. I'll take that. So let's start with renewal, right? That's the, I guess, bottom left quartile, and probably the one that we, maybe that accounting and audit is in, where they need the most help. What does that mean, the renewal, and how do we move from there into stunted, or is stunted the crappiest?
So for those that are listening or watching, imagine a 2x2 matrix, because I figured after 5 books, Phil, I should have at least one 2x2 matrix. You can't be a
A
a
must.
business writer. Yeah, it's a must. Yeah. Otherwise you get kicked out of the club, right? You're no
True.
longer, quote, business writer. So on the y-axis, that's the one on the left. Let's think of that as work. And the x-axis is life. That's the one at the bottom. And so, Phil, you're right. There's 4 quadrants, 4 personas. And the bottom left, so work is not going great. Let's just call it. The work factors aren't going great. And your life factors, which are more akin to, Phil, like your sense of self, like your character, right? It's not, does the boss want to balance my checkbook or ask me about interest rates on my mortgage? It's not that life stuff, right? It's about you as a human being. So instead of being chronically disengaged, right, which is negative, why not are we in renewal? So renewal means there are certain factors at work and certain factors at life that are not going well. And so in combination, what you need to be doing is having a conversation with your leader and your peers and your family and whoever else you've got on your inside team, if you will, through life, saying, well, what is it? Like, is it my well-being? Like, that's not really going well for me. That's a life factor, by the way. Is it, the strategy at work? I don't really quite get it. So I'm kind of, diminishing returns there. I don't know where we're going. And so I'm confused. It's that type of conversation where you got to be having with, to the question that someone posed, like, how do we fix this? It's all about, first of all, creating these conditions in a more positive light, and then having open dialogue conversations with each team member that you have under your purview to say, well, where do you fit and why? So recap: bottom left, renewal; bottom right is called stunted. Now, it might sound negative. It's not. It's when the work factors in totality aren't going very well, but your life factors actually are. And so you're kind of like, you're grown into who you are. You know who you are as a human being. Your life factors are positive, all of them. But on the work side, you're kind of like, okay, well, I don't know what's going on around here. It feels a bit weird. And so when you're stunted, now you're saying, look, I know who I am, but I'm kind of like wilting a little bit to the side here when I get to work. So I need some help with what's going on with these work factors. That's the bottom right. The top left, which you're in, Phil, and thank you for being so vulnerable and honest, is budding. When you're budding, you completely understand pretty much everything that's going on, quote, at work. So you feel like you belong. You've got great trust. You understand the strategy. There's norms here. So the norms are the processes in which to get the work done. You're like, I got this. I know how to do this. But maybe there's a couple of those life factors, relationships, because you just moved cities, Phil, right? Maybe it's the agency. Do I feel that I actually have self-determination in all that I can do totally? Or am I in a new role? And it's kind of like, I'm trying to figure that out. I don't have quite all of the self-autonomy that I need to get to. So for you, when you're budding, again, not negative, it's that, okay, everything's clicking with my work factors on the y-axis, but on the x-axis, some of these life factors are just not quite there yet. And that's okay. This is the other point. Obviously, tops are clicking and you're blooming. When I say to be budding is perfectly fine, Phil, I've been in this, like, I guess work world for 26 years now, and 27 years in total this year. And I realized that in the 5 different logos that I've worked for, that I have been in not only all of the 4 quadrants. In one organization, I have been twice in 3 of the 4 quadrants. So depending on how things happen at work and in life for you as a human being, you're going to be just like the seasons, hence the gardening metaphor. Sometimes it's inclement weather. Sometimes it's nice. Sometimes there are things that happen like an earthquake or an acquisition, or you move cities as you've done, and you've kind of just got to figure your bleep out. So that's what I'm getting at. It's not about being engaged and disengaged. And it's not about being an employee. It's about being a human being, and leaders having these more open, authentic, vulnerable conversations, just like you're doing with me, about where you're at. And maybe there's some tweaks to have, but let's be honest, Phil, like me, we're not going to be blooming every time, every role, every part of a career. It's just ebbs and flows, just like a garden.
Yeah. And it's life and work.
Yeah.
I mean, to your point about that, right? I don't know anybody here yet in Ohio. That is hard for me. As a capital E extrovert, I don't have a network in place yet here. So I'm working on that. But yeah, could that improve? Heck yeah. Will it improve? Well, that depends. Will I put in the work to do it? If I will, then yes, it'll improve. And if I don't, well, then it won't. So I think that's, that is a good thing to understand how that works. So I love that you sent me some seed packets as well, because it gives me an opportunity to really think about, what am I planting? What are those seeds? What's going to grow? For instance, in this one, right, we've got dill that's going to grow here. I'm not expecting to get an eggplant, right? I'm expecting to get dill. So I have to plant the right seeds to get what I want to get. So how do I do that, Dan? If I want to improve, let's say, life, is there a one size fits all, do this to improve? Or is this more of a continuum where it's personal for me?
So here's the beauty, right? I mean, in a garden, there are lots of different varieties of a bean, of a tomato. There's lots of different plant types, right? And then you've got to start thinking about, we're talking metaphor here, of course, right? To you and your work and your life. There's different factors that come into play. pH balance of the soil, like soil itself, good soil, bad soil. How often are you watering or not? How much sunlight or not? Do the seeds and thus, the budding phase, do they need a little bit more nurturing? You kind of pull them inside at night so that they're not getting frost in the early spring. All of these different kind of metaphors we need to be thinking about us, the human being. And so, again, I believe there's a fiduciary incumbent responsibility of leaders to be having these open dialogue conversations about where people are at. Sure. I mean, you went and took the assessment, it's free. And so you can find out what you are, but it's only as good for you to know where you are if so much as then you enter into conversations with yourself, but also with others, including your leader, to say, hey, this is what's happening right now. So let's dissect you. So, and you've been so good to me and so vulnerable and so awesome. And I know about the move and I know about the new organization. And again, you've been so kind. It doesn't surprise me that you're budding. Like, it's very difficult to move city, move home. You've got the family, you've got a new gig. You've got this podcast still. You're just doing all things. Like, you're just an amazing, multifaceted and talented individual. But here you are in a city, as you say, a big E extrovert. And I'm assuming that your relationship quota, even though you have so many fans and relationships online, you still need the sort of human body face-to-face exchange. So
Absolutely.
I'm guessing that if I were your leader, I'm having a conversation about how can I help you should you need it? Any development efforts around how to relationship build inside of Ohio. It's a big state. How can I help you? Is there anyone I know? Can I help you get out into, Toastmasters or other kind of community groups, ERGs that are kind of more community ERGs, if you will, right? Just stuff like I would be doing that with you if I were your leader. And so that's the thing about this, is that it's not about asking, are you engaged or not? And what are the HR tactics on our Tiger team we need to put together this year to get more people to use the foosball table? So that's going to make people engage. It's about the actual humanity and having these conversations about the humanity of each of us as human beings as to what we need to maybe flourish and thus bloom sort of more in the top right.
Yeah. Way more personal than here's free pizza for everybody.
Right. I mean,
which I love.
Come on. I just break out in acne when I get the free pizza. I'm 52 with acne. That's just not good, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I actually read a company that they want this week. They tried like for $9, they had craft beer and craft coffee and craft drinks that people could get for $9 a month to kind of convince them to come back in the office. Well, I'm not giving up another 3 hours a day of my life for free coffee. That's just not going to work. And it's like, did they really think that was going to work? I mean, how does a leader sit with that? And one of the things that I love that you give us a lot of case studies, a lot of things in Work-Life Bloom that helps us to do that. But Dan, is that just old-fashioned thinking that employees just want perks, or how do we help leaders get started on that path so that they can start understanding that it's not just about giving them seeds, it's about actually helping them water them and fertilize them and pruning out the weeds that sometimes come up?
Yeah, this is an adage, an homage to being a gardener. And what I say really upfront in the book is that this book is not about you being the ultimate gardener for your team member. You're not there to tend to their garden box. You're there to provide tools and counsel on how they might tend to their garden box in a more mature, copacetically awesome way. But there's a dialogue there. You have, ideally, as a leader and thus the master gardener, a little more experience. You've known to put on those garden gloves. You know when to sow, when to water, etc. You've got experience. That's why you've been elevated to a leadership role. So this whole metaphor is, again, you having conversations side by each with your team member about their garden box, and sort of providing wise counsel along the way. Now, the one thing I'll say is that the garden box metaphor here is only as good as some of the conditions in which you as the leader create. You can create tornadoes. You can create pH imbalance. You can create this by some of the factors that you've set up in your place of work. So, to one of the callers here, like, how do you incorporate these concepts into mature hierarchical environments like audit and accounting world, where we're seeing some serious impacts of the lack of staff? This idea of work-life bloom, this model, is coming and stemming from me being in the corporate world and the academic world for 27 years or so, and seeing that the current paradigm, whether it's accounting, FinServ, high tech, telecom, CPG, manufacturing, it doesn't matter the widget. We've set up the constructs wrong. And what we need to be doing is saying, okay, well, how are these kind of work-life factors going to affect performance of the human being? Because isn't that what work is all about? We're trying to perform. We're trying to achieve goals and objectives. But what I'm seeing, Phil, and I know you do this as well, is that there's a cost right now that's happening. And so my crystal ball gazing into my garden box into the future of life and work is, what's the downstream field consequence of what it is that we're doing to our people? So can we take a step back then and say, well, maybe there's hierarchy is okay. I'm not trying to eliminate that, but maybe the way in which that we set up how to get the work done through the people that have a life and they come into work and they go back, isn't that maybe the way in which we need to rethink? So let me unpack this. One of the work factors are norms. So of one of the 6 norms, what's a norm? A norm is how we do the work, where we do the work, when we do the work. So what are the processes in which that we are going to get this done? The current way in which that we are sort of defining these is get your ass back into the office. That's happening a lot. Well, I'm not against face-to-face. I think it's really important. But what if we were to have a conversation about what is the right, when, where, and how of work with our team members? What if we were to consult? What if we were to engage and explore with their ideas, and maybe together we can come up with what that norm is for the when and the where and the how of work? To me, as opposed to just hauling people back in and saying, look, going to come back to work 5 days a week now because I said, oh, by the way, here's some free soda and some cheesies. Is that really what we think is going to catapult us through to a level of high performance? To me, when I'm thinking about the case studies, this model, and the data, whether it's my data, the research I did, or anyone else's, I'm kind of alarmed about where we're going. And maybe I'm just one of the old guys in the Muppets up there on the rafters there. But that's what I see, man. I'm sorry, Phil.
Yeah. Well, the good news is that there is a path forward. And that's the big thing here. And before we talk about that, and Kelly's got another question here, I want to encourage folks to get a copy of Dan's book, right? At worklifebloom.com. You can take his assessment, get a copy of the book. Lots of good stuff there. Lots of resources. Dan's even got a couple cool playlists up there that you can get, which I super love. So let's get to Kelly's question here. Kelly asks a big one here, Dan. If showing genuine care and intentional attention goes a long way, but do leaders have to do the inner work themselves and gotten a higher level of maturity? What do you think about that?
I think that Kelly is my new best friend. I got to be honest, because Work-Life Bloom, as much as it's a leader book to nourish the team, to allow the team to flourish and to nurture that team, right up front, this book actually starts with you. So if you don't have self-reflection, if you have the inability to recall that self-actualization only happens if you start with self, if you're unable to sort of look in the mirror and say, well, what is it that I need to change so that my team sees me as an individual who does want to nurture, but who demonstrates the behaviors of what it means to flourish or to bloom? Good gosh. So absolutely, the introspective analysis has to occur. I encourage everyone to take the assessment. It's free. So like, Phil, when you take it and you say you're budding, again, it's not negative. It's just where you're at. So now you're going to do, I hope, as a leader, right, the autopsy. Not to be too negative here, but just I guess an analysis. All right. So what does that mean? So budding. Okay. Well, it looks like I'm kicking ass with 5 or 6 of the work factors. That's good. So that gets me in the positive tick on that side. But the life ones. So which one is it that I need some help with? Is it relationships? So you're doing a self-analysis. Possibly, because we talked about that. Is it respect? Do I not feel respected yet because I'm in the community that's new to me and I haven't really, no one's felt my PG vibe. Like it's not that dear. But so if I'm going to work, I'm not feeling that vibe either because I'm not feeling respected for who I am as PG with my great shirts and my great glasses and my great flu vogs and so on. Do I feel well? Like well-being is another one. So again, like here we are. You're budding. It's not negative, but we want to be having these self-introspective conversations with ourselves and people that support us so that we know what we might want to work on. And again, like back to me, just for a selfish second here, when I came up with this model, it was only until last year, like in the fall, after I was doing assessment, finishing up the global assessment research, that I realized I should turn this thing on myself. And so when I went through my 5 logos of 27 years and I literally put myself back in the shoes of each of the roles and situations, and I saw myself as I was doing the assessment, like, oh, wow. So here's an example, like concrete, so people can understand. I work for a company called Business Objects, about 10,000 people. I was its head of its corporate university, kind of like Liz Wiseman, right? So like Oracle U, Business Objects U, BOU, Business Objects University, or UBI, we call it, University of BI. So 10,000 people. I'm in charge of ed services, running all the revenue generating stuff and the internal team members and making them all smart and happy and culture and whatever. SAP buys Business Objects, big ERP company. I kind of knew this at some point. Microsoft or someone would buy Business Objects. So, it's a $1 billion acquisition. It's in the summer of 2007. So for the next year and a half, I am desperately trying to convince SAP leaders in Waldorf, which is near Frankfurt, Germany, that not only did they buy this high-tech business intelligence company, but they bought the best culture money could buy. That what really you're taking our 10,000 person culture and weaving it into your 75, 85,000 person culture. That's what you bought. So I kept going back to Germany, trying to convince people. And they looked at me like I was some incredulous, bald Canadian with 0 talent and said, yeah, thank you very much. Please exit door right. And so for that's 14, 16 months, Phil, I precipitously dropped from blooming to renewal. And I had to go through with my boss, the Business Objects boss, and his name was Dan as well. Like Dan, I don't know what's happening here. The team I have, 150 odd people. I mean, I got to save these people, first of all, but this is going to end badly. Like, how do I get out of this? How do I find a way to help these 150 people? And so, we cooked up a plan to make sure that everyone was safe so that I could feel good for these 150 people. They got parsed out into 4 different teams, by the way, around the world. And then I took the package that was presented to me and I left. with nowhere to go. And I stood at that renewal phase for 6 more months. So I was kind of in renewal for about a year and a half. But I knew that I would find my way somewhere down the path. I knew that someone would call, or I would find a way to pick myself, dust myself off, and get back on the garden box, so to say. And it did happen. But that's kind of a real world example when I was self analyzing last fall of, well, hot damn, there's no way that I dropped from blooming to renewal. And I was like, actually, Dan, you did. And here's why.
Yeah. Well, it starts with being honest with yourself, taking that assessment, making sure that you get it, and then doing the internal work. So, friends, I want to encourage you, get a copy of Work Life Bloom. Go to worklifebloom.com, take Dan's assessment, get to know Dan more. He's not big on social media. It says he's on Instagram, so you can find him there, of course. But go to worklifebloom.com, check out his playlist, check out his resources. He even wrote a poem for us that is very powerful. So, Dan, I just want to say thank you for sharing all of this great stuff with us. Thank you for writing an awesome book. And hey, thanks for the seeds, man.
Here's looking at you, Phil. I know that you're going to plow through from budding to blooming very soon.
Absolutely. I'm going to do the work. So for sure. Thank you, Dan. And thanks everyone for watching and listening.